Hooray! My microphone works again! And to celebrate the acquisition of a new 9-volt battery, let's do some brand new Transformers from the new RID line. And yeah, we're finally getting some Decepticons in this line, and guess what? Turns out they're a lot better than Steeljaw was. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of the newest additions to the Decepticon ranks in Steeljaw's pack, Thunderhoof, our resident Cybertronian gangster, because that's a thing apparently. So yes, he is, of course, a tractor, because, you know, the guy who looks like a deer turns into like a John Deere tractor. Never mind. It's bizarre. Speaking of bizarre, only tractor transformer I can think of. This is a bit different, isn't it, to say the least. So yeah, he's got a nice, solid, hefty look to him. Giant tires, big plow in the front for tilling the field and working the soil, doing the work of the land. Or I don't know, hiding bodies. He's a gangster. It's what he does. But yeah, he's looking fairly solid here. Cast almost entirely in this nice metallic flake blue, looking pretty good. A lot of black in there as well. You'll notice a few things right off the bat. For instance, yeah, the sides are a little bit messy, because apparently Hasbro kind of cheaped out on this section and did not paint anything blue, so it's just this big black mess right there on the side of the vehicle, which looks kind of ugly. Takara's version rectifies this. Takara's version has like a ton of paint to rectify this, so it's a little bit disappointing here as it just kind of stands out against everything else. The rest of it's not so bad, though. You got these gigantic tires, which is appropriate for the vehicle. You've got a little bit of deco here in the front for lights and, I assume, turn signals. Windshield is painted in, at least on the front it is. A little bit more black on top, which goes into some of the natural plastic coloring. Black for the smokestacks, and kind of nothing going on in the rear, really. But it's a tractor, so it's not exactly like I expect a whole lot of amazing and exciting detail on him. No, I'm pretty much happy with what we've got here. Would have been happier with a little bit more for the actual plow, or whatever this would be called, the comb, whatever it is. So a little bit, some side to side would be nice. It can move up and down at least, so you do have that. That looks like it could do some damage, assuming this is one of those tractors that can actually get some speed up at least. But yeah, it's at the very least a unique alternate mode, and one that's actually quite compact down for the robot he turns into. So without any further ado, we're going to get him into robot mode here. We'll start by pulling all this out, and you'll see that just kind of came apart on its own. The pegs on mine don't hold together particularly well, but I've heard others that have been fine. I think the Takara release came out fine from what I heard. Going to unclip those from the sides and raise that out so we can get all this whole section, well, except for a little bit of the shell up there. Up front, down, and before we get it all the way down, we have to rotate the waist around, then we can click it all the way through. The legs fold out from themselves and then split open. From here, we're going to, might as well do this in order so we have a nice head reveal here. Clip these into place there. Come on. There we go. And with those in place, we'll bring the entire chest down. That'll clip into place. Rotate the plow itself, fold down, and then fold up. And after a little bit of additional straightening, just to make sure he looks as good as he can. Oh, we also need to get the hands out. Let's not be silly about this. There we go. That gives us our warrior class, or I guess weaponizer, because they've changed the name on the packaging now. Thunderhoof in his full robot mode, and now you kind of see where the hoof part of his name comes from. So yeah, he actually transforms pretty good and gets a very he uses his mass really well and actually sizes out pretty well during transformation. And it's a much more involved transformation than I had expected out of the RID line. I mean, the front of him becomes his legs, and the back half of him becomes the arms. Somehow his whole like structure reverses around. It seems way more complicated than necessary for this character, but I do appreciate that level of complexity. I'm going to go in close on the head now, and not too close because I want you to be able to see those antlers. At least let's say I want the thumbnail to be able to see those antlers. So I'll give you a closer look now. He's got beady little red eyes, which of course he does. Gangster. All mounted by that gigantic crown that gives his helmet the most unique of looks. It's like he looks like Armada Megatron just went completely nuts with his own head design. That's what it looks like. I want that repaint now. Someone make this Armada Megatron. The weirdest of alt modes for Earth. But yeah, he does look good, and he does look fairly like the cartoon model. Maybe missing a little bit of color, and I will admit that about this toy. So yeah. Here in the robot mode, we see... There, stand up straight. Stand up straight. You're on camera. Yeah, so you see in robot mode, he proportions out really, really well. He looks solid in the right areas, and nothing really looks too out of place. It's not a bad job at all. And one of the things I really appreciate, nothing really hanging off. Like I said, this is one of those toys that uses its bulk extremely well. I would equate it almost to like a Lockdown or Viacon as far as execution on just how nice his robot mode comes together. I will admit the downside to him is detail level. Takara's got a ton of paint, an absolute ton. Whereas here on the US version, it's pretty thin. Unfortunately thin, that is. There's only a slight bit of metallic blue accent around him, a little bit of black to break up the blue, a little bit of red on the knees. The only real addition to the paint is on his feet, with a little bit of that metallic blue. It's not even really metallic, now that I think of it. And the hooves themselves have been painted in. And that's pretty much it. It's a really thin paint job. And of course, that's kind of to be expected in this line. It usually just lets the plastic do the talking to present a more simplified and what I guess is supposed to go for a more cartoonish look, being all solid colors and not bright metallic paint and all that. But it does look a little bit boring. And it does mean he's missing a lot of detail from the show. There's some detail I like. I like that the smokestacks from the vehicle mode are under his arms. It makes it look like he's got some built-in weaponry. And speaking of weaponry, he does come with a rather interesting bit of machinery that he calls a weapon. It looks like a chainsaw mixed with a shotgun, which sounds like a Borderlands weapon, but hey, it's what he comes with. There is a mounting point for it on top of the vehicle mode. I always forget that these things have mounting points for weapons in vehicle mode, because I still find it such a silly little feature. But hey, it's there if you want to use it, I guess. And now it's in his hand, and it looks fairly good. It's a fairly thin little gun, but that kind of plays into the chainsaw part of it, doesn't it? And, you know, it works out well enough for what it is. I'm glad these toys have accessories in the first place, considering that they are a little bit on the cheap side. So, how we look on articulation? Well, the head does rotate. It's not ball jointed, because it's part of the transformation. See, the ball joint on the shoulders have a good cut and a good range, and that works out well, except they do have this funny little bit of engineering where the shoulder is up here and then the bicep just kind of comes out of the wheel and comes down. It looks fine most of the time, but some of the poses are going to have these weird gaps in it. But it does mean that the transformation hinge does work here for an additional bit of arm articulation. You have a ball joint in the elbow, so 90 degrees of bend, and a little bit of rotation, though that piece does get in the way thanks to the big tire beside it. We have a waist rotation. I'm always happy about that. It's a little bit limited, but hey, it's there. It gives some personality to his positioning. Ball joints on the hips, that all works out. Thigh swivel, that's good. The knee, great amount of range in the knee. You have this down here too, which unfortunately does not lock in as solidly as I would like. I want to click when I do that, and I'm not getting a click. So that does tend to fold up on you sometimes if you're a little bit quick to pose him. That's pretty much it for the articulation front. It's not bad. He actually has a fairly decent range. He can pose fairly adequately. So he's ready for combat. That's pretty much the bulk of the toy. There's not a whole lot to talk about with these RID Warrior / what used to be Deluxe classes. I do think these have gotten a lot better. Thunderhoof does make a fairly competent transformer. Yes, he's thin on paint, and he does have a pretty glaring omission of blue in vehicle mode. But the robot mode is fairly good. He has a nice, solid look to him. The toy itself is fairly solid, and everything kind of holds together well. That's more than I could say for the first Decepticon in this line. He just plain looks good and has a really good transformation. Something I'd expect more out of Generations, not the RID class. So I do think it's a worthy pickup, especially if you haven't given this line a chance before. It's a decent little figure at the very least. It's such a novelty of a Transformer. I definitely think it's worth a spot in a shelf somewhere. I don't necessarily say it's yours, but hey, if it happens to be there, I don't think I'll be disappointed.